قابض الطول لا إله إلا هو إليه المصير. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. اللهم لك الحمد يا من لم تتخذ ولدا ولم يكن لك شريك في الملك ولم يكن لك ولي من الذل والله أكبر كبيرا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الحمد وله الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين. تركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. شرح الله له صدره ووضع عنه وزره وأعلمه أن مع العسر يسرا يسرا، وأمره أن إذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي المقصرة بتقوى الله، وأحذركم ونفسي من عصيانه ومخالفة أمره لزوما لقوله الحق تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وكذلك في قول الحق تبارك وتعالى: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. يقول الحق تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. This is a beautiful verse in the sequence of ayat from Surah Al Imran that speaks about the battle of Uhud. And the sequence of the ayat addresses a very difficult moment in the history of the Prophet ﷺ and the history of Islam, whereby the Sahaba were defeated in the battle. And as a result of that defeat, 70 of the Sahaba were lost, among them the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ himself. And then Quraysh, after they dispersed, they thought it is better for them to go back again and finish the job they have come for, which is ending the root of the da'wah of the deen of Allah in Medina. So they clustered themselves and got themselves back again to go and fight the Prophet and the Sahaba. And the Prophet ﷺ learned about that and asked those Sahaba whose wounds are still fresh, whose wounds are still bleeding, to be joining him to stand against the aggression of Quraysh. And in that context, Quraysh sent someone to create the fear within the minds and the hearts of the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ. But the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba ultimately were not defeated by this false propaganda, and they put their full trust in Allah Azza wa Jal's plans and abilities. And as a result of that, they said, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is enough for us to count on, and He is indeed the best of wakil, one you can count on and rely on in difficult situations. And that's exactly what the situation is in Gaza, close to a year of the eruption of the war, and as the war also extends further beyond the borders of the occupied land of Palestine and reaching out to Lebanon, we also repeat what Allah Azza have said to us in this surah, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is enough for us, and He's the real one. We can natawakkal alayhi, and that's the tawakkul wa ni'mal wakil. And in the context of this, allow me today to snapshot or to click and expose one slice of this conflict, which is the children in both sides, in Gaza and in Lebanon, and expose what is not seen, unfortunately, with the media, or what is not being paid attention to as a result of the too much politics that is involved in media and social media outlets, analyzing what are the tactics of the superpower versus the tactics of the occupier versus the resistance, and little being paid attention to, which is the civilian suffering, and more specifically the children. And as I was doing my research, I come across a briefing that was done in February 2023 by one of the United Nations representatives, in which he said there's about 17,000 children in Gaza at that time, and this is almost 6 months ago, who are unaccompanied or separated from their own parents. And there is about 1.7 Palestinians who have been displaced from their homeland and from their own homes. And as a result of that, 1% of this 1.7, which is 17,000, have been separated from their own families. And this indicates that these children have been exposed to very traumatic scenes and incidents that would have a long-term injury on their mind and psychology as they move on in their life. And prior to the war, the UNICEF was indicating that there's about 500,000 children in Gaza, this small geographical area, who are in need for a mental health attention as a result of the problems they are suffering from and dealing with as a result of the siege that was placed on Gaza for an extended period of time, over 17 years. And the one who reported or was doing the debrief was saying that he met almost 12 children and did interview one-to-one with them. And from those whom he have interviewed, 7 out of 12 have lost both parents and some family members. And 3 of them have lost one parent, and the rest who have lost other family members. And he shares the story of Razan, an 11 years old young woman or girl who was living with her parents in her uncle's home because their home was lost. And then eventually, as a result of the war, that home was bombarded. And Razan, this 11 years old girl, lost both parents, including two of her siblings. And she was herself injured, and as a result of her injury, her leg were amputated. And then shortly after the surgery of amputation, she developed infection. And he's saying, when I was talking to this girl, I could see the trauma in her eyes. I could see how she is living an unusual, abnormal life compared to other children in normal situations. And this is what we need to be vigilant and aware of, as we are now 1 year away from this unjustified, brutal war that has no justifications for the usage of the unusual force. We're talking about bombs that are heavy in weight, that can penetrate underground, that was thrown into tents, thrown into hospitals, thrown into schools, which would be providing shelter for families and children. And as a result of that, we are seeing families being wiped off from the records, seeing children losing multiple members of their family, could possibly, and the percentage is so high, to lose both of their parents, end up in the custody or the caregiving of a relative who are already exhausted for providing a shelter, food, water, or possibly medication to their own children. These scenarios or these circumstances that are present right now have been extended for a whole year, and Allah knows if they are going to end or not, are issues that are so alarming to the officials of the UNRWA, because they're saying these issues could be creating deep psychological wounds that the children will be struggling with. And I counted almost 16 symptoms. I'm not gonna go over all of them, but I'll be choosing some of them to just magnify the devastating environment that these children are living in. There is a profound grief and mourning difficulty within these children. We here in Canada, whenever a family member is lost, the different resources in the hospital are deployed to deal with the child's grief and help them to mourn safely in the event of a loss of a sibling, as it was the case when I was working with Children's Hospital, or when it is in an adult hospital. There are so many resources: the social worker, the chaplain, the psychologist, or to a certain extent the psychiatrist, will be all working together as a team to provide some emotional support and give a sense to these children to deal with that grieving loss. Now imagine a child in a traumatic situation like a war zone, not only losing a sibling or one parent, but losing both parents and some other siblings, and being injured and left alone with the care of another family, extended family member who is already struggling to provide for his own children the shelter, safety, as well as the food and water, which is a precious commodity right now in Gaza. There is a complete sense of abandonment that these children would feel. They have no one to be there for them, to give them the hug that we take for granted, that we offer to our own children or to children who are suffering from a psychological trauma or distress. This could be a luxury for them that they will not be able to find as a result of this traumatic environment they're living in. There is also severe separation anxiety that results from them not being able to find the loved ones around them. The connection between any child and a parent is essential for the overall well-being of the child, whether mentally or physically or emotionally. So they will be they will be suffering from these issues, the severe separation anxiety. And what is more even disturbing is the survivor guilt syndrome, as they call it, which is coming from the fact that I, as a child, could be the result for why my father or my mother was killed, because of the fact that of the emotional bond between the child and the parent's curiosity and care and eager to protect their own children all the time and put them in safe place or even cover them upon the time of a bomb dropping. They would feel that my father or my mother or my older sibling have taken their own life for me, not realizing that they have nothing to do with it. It is just this brutal war and those ruthless leaders of the world who have failed them as children. Those leaders who have provided huge bombs, 2,000-pound bombs that can destroy a whole building, to destroy simple places like tents and schools and hospitals. These children could also be dealing with emotional numbness and detachment from everything around them. And they will be generating also a lot of anger that they're unable to deal with, will be manifested into their life later on down the road, as they will be dealing with in their normal daily life activities. And there is also regression in their developmental skills as a result of all these psychological wounds and traumas they will be exposed to, as the research have indicated that children who survive wars will be exposing and showing developmental issues when they go back again to school as a result of the congested, unhealthy, emotional and traumas that are stored in the back of their mind. And what's important and the most common that we have heard a lot about is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is just one of the symptoms that they will be dealing with that could lead them down the road to develop depression and prevent them from being potentially able to explore the possibilities and chances for them down the road after the end of the war. So we're talking about individuals who are still young but are suffering from so many psychological wounds and problems that could make them dysfunctional individuals. Now, despite of what I have presented to you, we all have watched different clips in social media. We've all have seen a mom or a dad or a child on the media outlets, and we've seen something that have astonished us. We've seen people who have taught us the real understanding of counting and depending and tawakkul ala Allah Azza wa Jal. We've seen Little children teaching us the real understanding of Iman and believing in Allah Azza wa Jal. Because our understanding to Iman and believing in Allah Azza wa Jal has always been coming to us through the textbooks or the lectures we hear on Jum'ahs and for different other speakers. But these children are demonstrating for us the real understanding of tawakkul ala Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is exactly what has inspired them and continue to help them to cope and adjust with the difficult challenges they are living in. But we cannot let them alone. We cannot leave them alone, because Allah Azza wa Jal the Mighty will be asking every single one of us, what have you done to these children? What have you done to these innocent people who have been going close to a year under a brutal war? What will you be providing to Allah Azza wa Jal when you stand between His hands, when He say, my servant, I was thirsty and you did not provide a drink for me. I was hungry and you did not provide food for me. And I was sick and you did not visit me. And you will be saying, Ya Allah, you are the Mighty. How I would be able to do these for you? He would say to you back, didn't you know that one of my servants was hungry and you did not do anything to provide food for them? You did not do anything to quench their thirst. You did not attend by their beds to heal, to help them with their sickness. This is what our deen is all about. Our deen is not about listening to lectures and get emotionally high and move on after that and go back to your normal life. Our deen is a practical, dynamic deen that makes out of us giants, make out of us heroes that are practically able to do something, even that something is to be little, but at the end it will add up and will contribute to the efforts of others and will enable us all together as an ummah to be able to do something that would alleviate the suffering that we're dealing with right now as cumulatively as an ummah. Every one of us is able to say to humanitarian aid organizations that this is the minimum I can do, and I will be passing on the money to you so that you will be on my behalf able to provide the minimum basic needs for the children right now. We're not talking about mental health support, because this is something maybe will be able to come later on. We need to at least provide for these children the food, the drink, the medication that they're in need for. And then after that, we will be working on providing for them the psychological support, dealing with these children who have lost everything and lost the hope of their life, hoping that we will be from those whom the Prophet ﷺ said about them, أَنَا وَكَافَ الْيَتِيمِ فِي الْجَنَّةِ كَهَاتَيْنِ كَلَّا بَلْ لَا تَكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمِ وَلَا تَحَاضُّونَ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. There's a lot of emphasis in the Quran and the hadith of Prophet ﷺ to care for the orphans. These are orphans who have lost their parents at a young age in normal surroundings and supportive environment, let alone children who have gone through the war and have seen their own parents being torn apart in front of their own eyes. We have children, and I heard different stories from different people who have relatives in Gaza who would be going to check on the deceased, the dead of their own family members, and the drones will be shooting them and kill them as they are doing this. This is the reality, and how ugly and cruel the reality of the war in Gaza. There is no justification for us to just stand passive and do nothing about it. We need to be engaged in advocacy work. We need to show our anger and express our opinion and say, where is Canada, the country that has been historically known to be an advocacy for peace? Where is the role of Canada from what's happening in the war in Gaza? Is our government still doing support and dealing with the army of the state of Israel that kills civilians in Gaza? We need to impose that question to different levels of the government and hold them accountable for that and push them to have a neutral stand, a stand that has been historically known for Canada to be a peace broker, not to be standing with the aggressors against killing the civilians in any parts of the world. There are demonstrations going to happen as we're coming close to the October 7th anniversary. There's one happening on this coming Saturday, where let's go outside and participate and show our anger and express our opinion and support those advocacy groups that are trying to do something to bring back our loved country to the position that has historically been for it and that has made us proud of being Canadian. It is our work as Muslims to be advocate of the haqq. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada'a bil qist. This is what part of our responsibility as Muslims. This is what we need to do, the minimum we're able to do. And not to forget at the end, a very powerful weapon that your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam have utilized fully in most difficult situations. In the battle of Badr, when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam spent the whole night praying to Allah Azza wa Jal, though Allah have granted for him the victory. وَإِذْ يَعِدُكُمُ اللَّهُ إِحْدَى الطَّائِفَتَيْنِ أَنَّهَا لَكُمْ وَتَوَدُّونَ أَنَّ غَيْرَ ذَاتِ الشَّوْكَةِ تَكُونُ لَكُمْ وَيُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ وَيَقْطَعَ دَابِرَ الْكَافِرِينَ لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ وَيُبْطِلَ الْبَاطِلَ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. This is exactly what we're seeing right now. We are going through hardships. We're going through difficulties. And Allah Azza wa Jalla is trying to see who is who. Who has been concerned, and not only concerned, but being engaged, and who have been losing sleep over seeing what's happening to the Muslim Ummah. Who has been supplicating and making dua to Allah Azza wa Jalla in the darkness of the night, and in different positions and times where the dua is accepted. Who of us has the pain in the heart and translated that pain to dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, so that when the time come and we will be meet Allah Azza wa Jal, we will say, Ya Rabbi, this is the minimum I was able to do, and I was not living in ghafla and neglection to what's happening to the Muslim Ummah and to my Muslim followers around the globe. May Allah Azza wa Jal the Mighty have rahmah on our families and in Gaza, and our families in Lebanon, and our families in Sudan, and in Kashmir, and Myanmar, and different parts of the world. May Allah Azza wa Jalla have rahmah on this ummah, who is an ummah marhuma. May Allah Azza wa Jalla enable us to be standing for those who are miskeen, who are madloom, who are unable to defend themselves. May Allah Azza wa Jalla please our eyes with the ability to pray in al-Masjid al-Aqsa آمنين مطمئنين فإنه على كل شيء قدير. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيا فوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا وسيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا ان الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا ايها الذين امنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم وبارك اللهم على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد اللهم ان عبيدك ابناء عبيدك ابناء امائك نواصينا يا رب بيدك ماض يا رب فينا حكمك عدلا فينا قضاؤك نسألك اللهم بكل اسم هو لك سميت به نفسك أنزلته في كتابك أو علمته أحدا من خلقك أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك بأن تجعل القرآن العظيم ربيع قلوبنا يا الله اللهم اجعله جلاء لهمومنا وأحزاننا يا رب العالمين اللهم ندعوك في هذا اليوم الفضيل وندعوك في هذه الساعة المباركة وندعوك وأنت الواحد الأحد الذي لا إله غيرك بأن تفرج هم وغم وكرب المسلمين في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها اللهم ارحم أهلنا في فلسطين وارحمهم في لبنان وارحمهم في السودان وارحمهم في ميانمار وارحمهم في كشمير ارحمهم في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها فإنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم يا من أنزلت الكتاب وأجريت السحاب وهزمت الأحزاب عليك بأحزاب الكفر والمنافقين فإنهم لا يعجزونك يا جبار اللهم نسألك بجلالك أن تكتب لنا الصلاة في المسجد الأقصى آمنين مطمئنين فإنك على كل شيء قدير وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقم الصلاة